Hey guys, welcome to this week's podcast episode. I'm really excited about this particular topic, leadership and leadership coaching. And with that, I've got Ben Grimes, and he's going to talk to us all about leadership, mentorship. And like I said, this podcast is for those listeners for all different walks, want to come away inspired, motivated, and it's going to be a fantastic story. So, Ben, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Tell people your backstory, how you got started, and we'll delve right into it.
Yeah, you bet. So I am a leadership coach, kind of an executive coach for professionals, primarily lawyers, but other professionals, with an eye towards helping them step into positions of responsibility, so leadership. And I've been at the leadership game for, a couple decades. I started out as a helicopter pilot in the Army and spent a few years flying helicopters and leading a platoon, and then later as a staff officer in the Army, and then transitioned to the law and became a military attorney, and then spent the balance of my 20-year Army career as a military attorney before I retired, went to the Department of Justice for about 7 years, and realized what I really missed from the Army was not so much wearing a uniform, but rather helping people grow into positions of responsibility. And so I started this coaching gig, which I really love. And I really love being able to connect with folks, again, as they're reaching new levels in their career and starting to need to do and learn to do the things that nobody taught them to do in school.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And so kind of we'll talk about this because I've always heard this quote, leaders are made, not born. And what are your thoughts on that?
I think that's absolutely true. I think anybody can learn to be a leader, because leadership is not so much about innate skills or innate quality. I mean, it's not about innate qualities. It's about skills that can be learned. And once you understand what those skills are, what those values are that contribute to collaborative teams and inclusive environments, you really can exercise those skills repeatedly to build your leadership capacity.
Yeah. And how about this idea of, because most people equate leaders with extroversion, but talk about introverted leadership.
Yeah. So, believe it or not, I am also an introvert. I really enjoy my downtime. I'm a classic introvert. I recharge by being alone. That doesn't mean I can't communicate. And that doesn't mean introverts generally don't know how to communicate with folks. It just means that they're processing things in a different way. And so it's important to recognize that the leadership skills that are most important, the things that contribute to trust, transparency, and empathy in a culture, in a work culture, or in a work environment, those things have very little to do with standing up on a stage and kind of commanding a room. Right? You don't have to be General Patton to be a great leader. And really, I think introverts have a great advantage when it comes to leadership, because they're more, generally speaking, more adept at creating one-on-one relationships. And it's those relationships between people that build the trust in a team.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I'm an introvert myself. Like I love, public speaking, but I need to recharge, and, I prefer like a cup of coffee over just, a loud restaurant or a bar, kind of those. It's always that age old, because I think especially certain cultures, they value extroversion a lot, but I think introversion is coming into the picture a lot now. So talk about, the good fundamental tenets of leadership. You talk about trust, transparency, and, empathy, passion. Talk about that.
So to me, those are the building blocks of great leadership. And those principles, trust, transparency, empathy, passion, those are the principles that I've distilled from my career, both the formal leadership education that I've had, and then my experience, both as a leader and being led by great leaders. Those are the things that stand out to me as being fundamental. So it really isn't even about technical skill. Like in a lot of industries, the law in medicine, you often get promoted into the next role because you're great at doing the thing, right? So as a lawyer, I'm great at writing briefs, so now I get promoted. Or I'm great at winning cases, so now I get promoted into partnership, and now I have to manage a practice group or take on clients myself. As a doctor, you're great at surgery. You're great at diagnosing a problem for your patients, and now you're running a practice group, and now you're running the oncology group. And so instead of just reading scans, now you have to manage people reading scans. And it's a totally different skill set. And what everybody knows, but has a challenge to kind of solve for, is what happens when you get promoted into that position of responsibility that demands new skills that nobody ever provided you.
Yeah. It's so interesting because then you talk about, because, culture, DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, and all are impacted by leadership. So talk about, how leadership has to do with these qualities, and also the ROI on investing in leadership by firms, corporations, institutions, etc.
Yeah. So the first piece first. I think that the quality of leadership in your organization has a dramatic effect on the experience of your people, whether that's law firm associates or residents or your doctor cohort. The experience of the people in your organization depends on leadership, because if there is a lack of trust among your group, then that means that folks are withholding some piece of themselves, both personally and professionally. I just talked about this with a couple law firms in the last week. Building trust within your organization supports the gaps in knowledge that we as individuals have. If I'm concerned that you're going to hold it against me, that I ask you a question, that I reveal to you that I don't know something, then I'm not going to ask. And I'm going to suffer from that because I'm not going to learn the thing that I need to know. And our clients or our patients are going to suffer for that because we're not going to get the second opinion from our peers, or we're not going to seek out the answer that additional perspective that we might need to really get another look at the problem and solve the patient's problem, solve the client's problem. And so trust allows us to do those things on the professional side. And on the personal side, if I don't operate with trust, then I withhold a piece of myself. And that simply creates it's a cognitive burden to gauge every day how I'm showing up at work, how I'm talking to you, what I'm saying, what you know about me, and what I withhold from you. And I've got a preteen who tells one lie and then another lie, and then all of a sudden has to keep the lies in order to hold the whole thing up. And it's the same thing at work as an adult. If I haven't told you that I'm going to see, I haven't told you that I'm caring for my aging parents at home, and so now every time I talk about whether or not I'm available to extend my hours during the day, now I'm kind of shaping how I discuss those things with you, when it would be much simpler for me to just disclose that to you, disclose that vulnerable piece of who I am, let you in a little bit, then I don't have to carry that cognitive load, and I can be more me at work.
Yeah.
And then the other piece of things in terms of the business, kind of the business case for great leadership, there are two great concerns there. Number one, this is all about how you interact with clients and patients. Doctors are leading their patients through the relationship, through that medical relationship. Lawyers are leading their clients through that legal relationship. And we have to operate with trust and transparency in that relationship as well. But from a kind of purely business sense, if your employees can't be themselves at work, can't trust each other, can't work collaboratively, you're going to increase turnover. Turnover is going to increase costs, and that has a real business impact.
Yeah, which we'll talk about in this idea of just kind of like, this idea of like psychological safety, and we'll talk about creating an inclusive law firm and, more focused. One kind of question on the piggyback tail of what you just said is, how does leadership coaching compare to executive coaching or management consulting?
Yeah. So with regard to management consulting or other types of consulting, the difference between coaching and consulting is really about how much of me gets into the conversation. And so my goal as a coach is to draw out of you your values, your own insights, and offer myself up as a mirror to you so that you can see yourself from a different perspective. We know it's often easy to solve someone else's problems or diagnose someone else's situation because it's not us. But in the if the roles are reversed, it's very hard to see our own problems or our own challenges. And working with a coach allows you to see your own challenges from a different perspective and kind of solve for your own obstacles. So that's the goal with coaching versus consulting. As a consultant, I might come in and say, well, this is what I diagnose, and this is what I prescribe as a potential fix for your situation. Whereas in a coaching relationship, we would work together and to come to your conclusion about what your situation is and your conclusion about how to move forward, knowing where you're at. And the leadership coaching versus executive coaching kind of shades of difference there, but the focus for me as a leadership coach is working with folks who are in positions or going in or rising into positions of responsibility. So I work with folks with a view towards the impact on the organization as well as their own performance as professionals or executives.
Yeah, I love that. Basically, we know that the ROI of investing in leadership, small in solo firms as well as big, because your training isn't a lawyer. So I'm going to shift gears and talk about. So one thing is you talk about this idea of why is leadership so hard for lawyers, but a lot of politicians, people in politics, they're lawyers by training. So kind of talk about why this idea of why is leadership so hard for lawyers.
Yeah. It's a little bit counterintuitive, right? Because as you say, lawyers are kind of everywhere. There are tons of lawyers in government, tons of lawyers in leadership positions in corporations. But the way lawyers are trained, kind of like the way doctors are trained, as far as I understand it, is with a focus on individual production. It's all about what you know, what you do, how you perform. And so from law school into practice, the focus is on individual performance. And we do as a legal industry, we do very little work to develop skills of collaboration, of working together, of leaning on other people for their knowledge and insight. And that happens in law school. So in law school, your grade is about your writing, your performance, and you want to get onto law review, then you have to write and you have to perform. Once you get out into practice as a junior associate, it's all about I get the assignment, I turn in the work. I get the assignment, I turn in the work. And not until we get into senior associate or partnership levels are we now responsible for paralegals or investigators or legal secretaries or managing a trial team. And we've not only not trained the skill of leadership, we've trained away from the skill of leadership.
Yeah, it's same thing with medical school because it's like pre-med you're competing to get into medical, and then medical it's like you're competing to get into residency, and residency it's like we're always like focused on, but then leadership is a different skill. So you talk about why knowing your law firm's values isn't enough for leaders, and talk about that.
Yeah, I am a huge proponent of both individuals and organizations identifying and defining their values. Identifying them is important. You have to kind of know what you stand for, but defining them is also important because we can have different definitions about what it means to respect other people and how that plays out. And so knowing them and defining them is important, but in an organization, that's not enough. An organization has to identify its values, define its values, and then create the alignment between those top level values that we talk about and how we actually operate. And so the policies and procedures, the standard operating guidance that is written into the way we operate has to actually operationalize those values in order to make them, to bring them alive so they're not just like on the website. They're not just on our letterhead. They're things that actually impact the way we operate by policy. And that policy and practice has to be carried out by individuals on the ground. And so sometimes you'll be in an organization and say, wow, like in the lobby, our values are, splayed up on the wall, and this sounds great. But when I sit down with my supervisor, I'm not hearing that care for, I'm not hearing teamwork. I'm not hearing collaboration. I'm not seeing that in the hallways. And it's the alignment that's really important to make those values more than just talk on the wall.
Yeah. The other, I know we're kind of coming to the end of the conversation, which has been really interesting, is you talk about this walk your way to leadership and building your bench through leadership. What do those mean?
Walk your way. One of my favorite, perhaps my actual favorite leadership kind of tip or philosophy is leadership by shoe leather. Yeah. And it's as simple as getting out and getting curious and communicating with your people where they are. And in a virtual world, that doesn't mean that's impossible. It just means we have to do it differently. You and I are exercising shoe leather leadership. We're talking face to face, person to person, and we're doing that from across the country. Right? It's possible to do in a digital age, but this is a digital extension of that real life. Walk down the hall and talk to people. You can't lead your office or your organization from behind your desk. You have to get up and get out. And building your bench is really all about furthering that communication to make sure that we're educating people about what to expect at the next level. So it's not just about giving assignments. It's also about educating about why those assignments matter and how they relate to the thing that they're going to do and learn next.
Yeah, I love that. How can people contact you, follow you, reach out to you, check out your work, etc.?
Yeah, two ways. Number one, LinkedIn. I'm all over LinkedIn. And so I really invite folks to connect with me on LinkedIn, Ben Grimes, and at my website, bkgleadershipcoaching.com. Either way, I look forward to connecting with everybody out there.
And let's thank Ben. He's got extensive experience, really interesting, and he's translating it into leadership, coaching, and really great discussion. All of his resources will be in the links and show notes. And thanks so much for coming onto the podcast.
Oh, thanks for having me. This has been great.